This conference will now be recorded.
I've got to take a page out of Admiral Norman's book and reduce my bio to join the Navy, went to sea in some ships, commanded this ship, and then moved to Ottawa. It never gets less embarrassing listening to somebody read your bio. Thanks for the opportunity. I must admit that when Tim first asked me to speak to you this evening, I thought we'd be in person and maybe be able to have a drink and maybe spin a few dits afterwards. But any chance to get together with the extended naval community is always welcome. Like when I was in ships, you know that sailors only want to share what we do with the Canadian public and with other people, and I'm happy to bring you up to speed on where procurement, from my perspective as DNR, is going. I can't, unfortunately, speak with a great deal of depth on the River-class destroyer project or the proposed Canadian patrol submarine project, because those are at a different level of responsibility. Admiral Dan Charlebois and his team are heading that campaign. I do know a little bit, if you want to ask him the questions later on, about fairly non-specific things with regard to that. But my responsibilities, as we'll go through in the deck, is essentially for the current fleet and preparations for some of the future fleet as well, and augmentation of the capabilities of our current fleet. So we'll get right rolling here. This is a presentation, a modified presentation that I gave at a trade show. So primarily focused towards industry people. I saw Simon Hughes is in the audience, and perhaps a couple of Ann Healy. So some of you may have seen this product similar to this. So apologies if it's covering ground that you've already covered with me. But we'll do our best to make it interesting, and I'll try to tie in some real-world naval officer perspective on the slides. But I thought they'd be a good way to try to keep me on some sort of logical track. So if I could get the next slide, please. I know it's a PDF, so you'll have to scroll. So this is the team of section heads that I've got. My chief of staff is a federal public servant, but the rest of the staff are senior naval officers. The one exception here is Commander Martin Byrne has recently been positioned as the director of the Canadian Patrol Submarine Project. He's likely to be promoted in the very near future to captain, and he's heading up that team in Admiral Charlebois' shop. So he's also taking the Victoria-class submarine crew that I've got that's looking after the last few upgrades we're doing to ensure that Victoria survives until the introduction of the next class of submarine over there with him. So our submarine one-stop shop will go with Martin. Other than that, I usually show this slide to industry to make it very clear that our door and our telephones are open, right? If we're doing something wrong, we'd like to hear about it. Because after all, we're naval officers first, right? Everybody on that page is either on track to command a ship or has already commanded a ship. So that's where our experience comes from. That's where our expertise begins. And that's why they choose us to define the requirements for the capabilities going forward. But we're not scientists or engineers, so we count upon the community engagement with industry and with folks like NAC to let us know if we're a little bit off track and we need to readjust. So if you see there, the Kingston class, the Victoria class, the auxiliaries, and the Halifax class are in my wheelhouse, so to speak. So next slide, please. Like I said, this is sort of a bit of a stock presentation, but it accurately describes what my job is. I'm responsible to the Admiral through the Director General Naval Force Development to generate the requirements and maintain the capabilities that he needs to have in the fleet so that we have a seagoing and warfighting Navy. Next slide. I just said that, but it's sort of a soup to nuts thing here, right? I've got the ships, I've got pistols, I've got helmets, the fancy operational uniform that I'm sporting tonight for your viewing pleasure is also one of my responsibilities. So it's a varied portfolio covering a huge amount of ground that requires a large number of very specialized and knowledgeable subject matter experts, but we manage. We actually do quite a good job. I've got a great team. Next slide. So for those of you who have never worked in procurement, this is just a real quick shot of the phases of government procurement, a major capital project. And my team is responsible for the identification that we need a project or a capability that doesn't exist. We identify some options initially, and then we analyze those options to decide upon the most desirable, the most effective, and executable option. And as it transitions into definition, so that option is selected, and then we hand over to the engineers in ADM MAT, specifically Maritime Equipment Program Management, so Commodore Keith Coffin and his team, to define how that option we've selected, that widget or that gun or that vessel actually gets built and is integrated into the order of battle. But my team is engaged after that, but it's primarily responsible for the identification and options analysis phases. And that whole process, as many of you know, can take anywhere from 4 to 10 or 12 years. And in the case of large projects like the River Class Destroyer, we all know, it can sometimes take more. It can take decades before we get from an idea to an actual ship floating in the water. Next slide. So procurement priorities in the next few years. I think you had Admiral Topshe in the fairly recent past at one of these speaking engagements, and his priorities are people, platforms, and ready to fight. So I hold the levers on the platform priority and also the ready to fight. So we're looking at some projects that will replace platforms, potentially introduce new platforms, and augment the capabilities of the existing platforms so that we bridge the capability gap until the arrival of the River Class Destroyer. So some of the priorities, Canadian Patrol Submarine Project I mentioned, naval communications modernization, as some of you may be tracking, the United States is preparing to harden they're currently hardening their communications systems, and in order to fight in what we expect to be a very denied environment. Our adversaries around the world will likely make it very difficult to communicate securely. So we're modernizing those communications to make sure that we can. Remote and autonomous systems. I'm sure you've all seen drones and the impact that uncrewed systems are having in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. So that's no different for us. Anything that does unpleasant, dangerous, tedious things and removes a sailor from that equation is positive. So we're really pushing hard to start growing an organic uncrewed systems capability in the Royal Canadian Navy. I mentioned platform replacement. We'll get into that a little bit later. And I also mentioned Victoria class. And also, when you're dealing with uncrewed systems, you got to counter those uncrewed systems. We've seen very low-tech solutions in Ukraine sinking major warships. So the way we think about close-in defensive capability in ships is changing. The weapons available for that are changing as well. The way we use our current weapons is changing. So part of what I do is to liaise closely with the commander of the Warfare Center in Halifax to make sure that the tactics and procedures that the Navy is employing ties in with the capabilities to make sure that we're buying the things that are absolutely needed. So, and the strategic focus bit was it's an overall. We'd like to do things more green when we can. Everything needs to be usable and accessible to all genders. Indigenous procurement is a federal government priority, and therefore a priority for our procurements as well, and developing different regions in Canada. That's why we go to the different trade shows. That's why I go to London for Best Defense. There's the Saskatchewan trade show. I was in Calgary just before Christmas, engaging with all the different industries in Canada to make sure that we keep that conversation going. And we make, first of all, we become aware of the companies that are in Canada that can serve our capability requirements, and to make them aware that we're shopping, right? Make them aware of the things that we need, and that there are opportunities for Canadian companies to assist in defense procurement. Next slide. So I'm going to jump right in. I mentioned UAV projects. So these are a couple of things that might be of interest to this crowd. RC and ISTAR, they're in sort of backwards order there. RC and ISTAR will be the first government-owned, government-operated uncrewed air system flown from the Halifax class. So it's got about an 8-hour. We had two compliant bids just before Christmas. They're evaluating those bids right now. We expect in the very near future, the next couple of months, for a contract to be awarded. They're doing costing and different things right now to make sure that we can roll this capability out as quickly as we can. So that's going to deliver up to 12 UAVs. So each system is 2 UAVs. So each ship will get 2 aircraft and all the associated control facilities to fly it around. It'll have some integration into the command management system. So it's really going to open up the ability of a ship's captain to increase the ISR capabilities of the ship. Payloads that are on board, it's got an electro-optical and infrared camera. It's got a synthetic aperture radar. So it'll be like having an MPA airborne in the near vicinity of the ship, almost indefinitely. It's got, like I said, it's got about an 8-hour endurance before it has to come back and get gas. But the great thing is, no crew rest issues. You don't have to worry about making sure that the movie in the wardroom isn't too loud and it wakes up the pilots, and the mage comes in and the XO has to shut everything down. Little warfare officer joke there. Simon's laughing. Good job. Along with RC and ISTAR, and possibly more important than the aircraft themselves, is the organic skill set that we're going to start to build. We're going to build UAV operators. We're going to build UAV maintainers, and these are all sailors. The only thing the Air Force hasn't allowed us, or hasn't yet given us a mechanism to produce, are the air maintenance record keepers. So the sergeants that do air maintenance records keeping for airworthiness, that's a specific skill that's in an embedded RCAF trade. So until we get to that point, the RCAF has agreed to provide us with personnel or access to personnel to maintain the airworthiness certifications of those aircraft. Everything else is going to be done by sailors. So this will build our organic capability to operate UAVs going forward. And I think really, like I said, that is more important than the actual airplanes. The airplanes are going to be the tool with which we use those skill sets, but we really have to get into high gear here and start building sailors and officers that understand this equipment and how it can be used to force multiply. So AOPS UAS is another ISR tool for the Harry DeWolf class. So a little bit different. It won't have quite the legs that that RC and ISTAR has, but it's pretty close. It's going to be used for ice spotting. So we've got some algorithmic tools that are intended to go into that aircraft, or at least the system that feeds it, to spot ice and gauge thickness, and just to provide a larger horizon for ISR awareness in the north when Harry DeWolf is working up there. Next slide. These are getting really interesting now. The first two, LTU and JSS UAS, are in the near future. We're looking at options right now for the JSS UAS, and LTU is the next generation of the Puma aircraft that we're flying from the Kingston class right now. The main issue with the Puma is its only line of sight. The Kingston class don't have the ability to do air-to-air collision avoidance or air control. So they're limited to visual sight horizons so that they can make sure that they're not endangering another aircraft. But it does provide some enhanced capability to that class of ship. And it has introduced sailors to the idea of using a small hand-launched UAV. JSS UAS is envisioned as a fairly heavy lift UAV capable of lifting a pallet. So the idea would be vertrep, right? So you're going to have a couple of these things that are flying between the two flight decks while a ship is getting fuel and bringing over all your heavy stores. In almost it's probably going to be about a 90% automated manner. So these helicopters generally, and this goes for RC and ISTAR too, they're not piloted by the operator. They're controlled. So the operator tells them where to go and what to do while they're there, so at altitude and course and heading, but the aircraft flies itself. There's no pilot requirement, so there's no pilot training required as well. So a lot of it is automated now. It's not completely automated, but the automation is growing. And that weird one over on the side for the River class destroyer, that is a concept, obviously. It looks very wary and capable, but I think it's a safe assumption that no future class of ship will ever leave the slipways without being effectively designed to operate with uncrewed systems. right? So everything's going to be augmented by uncrewed systems. That doesn't mean we won't have an anti-submarine helicopter, but it means there will be more tools than just the helicopter in the captain's holster or in the magazine to affect the mission. Next slide, please. And this is just a rough timeline. I mean, it's just for interest sake for this group. But as you can see, we're moving pretty quickly with some of these things. I know it doesn't seem quickly when it says 2040, but the first ship doesn't arrive until 2035, right? So it won't be long after RCU arrives that they'll have a dedicated uncrewed system. It's very likely that we'll have uncrewed systems in the inventory already that can be immediately flown from that platform, and likely uncrewed surface and possibly subsurface systems as well. But the dedicated one is projected for there. Next slide. So underwater uncrewed systems, the development is a little bit less rapid than with the uncrewed air systems. They're a little less mature, but they're growing rapidly, and every algorithmic improvement that comes along that helps to automate taskings and operation of these machines makes them one step closer to being really, really useful for us. One that we're delivering in the very near future is the remote mine hunting and disposal system. That's a containerized mine disposal system consisting of some uncrewed location Remus 300 underwater vehicles. So they find the mine, and the disposal systems are sent out afterwards to blow it up. UEA is an interesting project, and it goes hand in hand with RDFAS as well. And you can read what the acronyms mean there, though. But this is going to be our persistent surveillance of the Northern Approaches suite of projects. It's in our North Strong and Free, the latest defense policy update. UEA is envisioned as a large underwater uncrewed vehicle, like a large submarine, uncrewed submarine, with its own sonar tail. It's also potentially going to service RDFAS, which are rapidly deployable underwater sensors. So if you could envision Harry DeWolf up in the Northern Approaches to Canada off the ice shelf, they'll get up there, get into position. They'll put UEA in the water, send it out on a patrol where it will leave a number of RDFAS sensors, and then it will do a patrol, right, up to a month, right, 20 to 45 days is what some of these large underwater vehicles are capable of, with the understanding that if it hears a submarine or it hears unusual activity, it will come up to radio mass depth, and it'll radio that in burst transmissions, so that the AOPS or a CPSP or a Victoria class can be sent over to investigate whatever it's found. So that'll allow Harry DeWolf, that has very long legs and the ability to operate in the north and the near north, to provide that persistent presence in the area and awareness to NORAD and Canadian the CDS's staff of submarines operating in our north, which right now is difficult to ascertain. This should significantly improve it. And I think if you go to the next slide, there's another project called Cobra, which is the sonar. Oh no, we're still in uncrewed. So the third item, or the third project in that suite of projects, is Cobra, which is a reelable sonar array for the Harry DeWolf class. So it'll be an active passive sonar tail that will be deployed from Harry DeWolf to augment that. Well, here it is right here. Yeah. So we're heading next month, actually March, into to the Defense Capabilities Board to progress Cobra into the next phase of development. So go back one slide, and I'll just really quickly touch on those other three. Yeah, so general purpose ROV, we're in the process of buying some of those. They're the ones that we're going to use for hull and jetty inspections. Some of the Naval Reserve divisions will have them with their port inspection divers. We just basically want to distribute uncrewed systems at various technology levels and various sophistications throughout the entirety of the RCN's organization, right? Some of them service divers, some of them service surface sailors, some of them service submarines. So that's basically where we're headed with that. And Commander Ryan Bell and his team are heading up the uncrewed systems section, and they are very, very busy. Next slide. I guess we can skip 2 because I spoke about Cobra. And this is already fast. The original concept when this project was imagined or introduced was a container that would put something like a SOSUS warning net bottom sensor array out, and then it would feed a container ashore. Technology is developed to the point now where it doesn't need to be as fixed as that. There are rapidly deployable and recoverable underwater sensors manufactured by Canadian manufacturers, as a matter of fact, that would do a much better job and are much more flexible and capable than what was originally envisioned. So I wouldn't put too much stock in the photograph of a sea container with a long cable going into the water. Next slide. Yeah, this is the large uncrewed submarine blurb. So we'll skip that, please. Again, this is Ryan's fairly aggressive timeline. As you can see, most of these timelines are 5 years or less. And for a major capital project, that is quite aggressive. What's helping us is the sticker price on some of these things is sub $100 million. So there's layers of governance and approval that come down when you get under that ceiling. And the technology is developing so rapidly, and here in Canada as well, that a lot of the barriers to some of the larger, older projects are not present for them. So we can move relatively quickly on a lot of these projects. Next, please. All right, so here's what I hope will be, I'll carve my name into this as the DNR that introduced the Canadian multi-mission corvette as a recognized project. I'm not certain as to how quickly we can get there, but as most of you know, the Admiral advised the Minister of National Defence to divest of the Kingston-class ships as their hull certifications expire. So the fleet is not being paid off in a single day. The hulls will continue until their hull certifications expire when they were due for their next major refit, and then they will be paid off. So the final Kingston-class ship has been approved for payoff in 2029. So we'll still operate the Kingston-class. They will still form an important part of our order of battle. Some of them are going to be moved around in order to support mine countermeasures, for example, which the Center of Excellence will be at the diving unit in Halifax, where the remote mine disposal systems are going to be placed. But Kingston is leaving. And to be completely frank, the replacement for that class needs to be much more than the Kingston class was. We got an awful lot out of the Kingston class as a Navy. They were the fourth generation tool for the last 2.5 decades. They built a lot of Mars officers. They built a lot of sailors. They showed the flag all around the world. We crossed oceans with them, which if you've ever been to sea in a bit of a blow in a Kingston class ship, you'll likely agree that is no small thing. They've helped to keep our NATO commitments going in the Baltic with NATO mine countermeasure squadrons. They really were a workhorse that we took full advantage of. In the modern day, we need small warships. So the vision for this ship, and this is an artist's rendition of a corvette, it'll be around 1,000 tons, but probably a little bit heavier. It'll be 105 meters or less, because with our berthing plan in Halifax, with RCD and all the other ships with the JSS, all the tugs that need to be berthed, 105 meters is about as big as we can go without another redesign of the berthing plan. It's got to have its own organic sensors. So it's got to have an air search radar. It's got to have a sonar of some sort, whether it's a hull mounted or a thin line array. It has to be able to detect and defend itself against modern threats. And another serious consideration that we're placing into this into the requirements is the ability to contribute to North American continental defense. So that means, it likely means, strike length vertical launch systems. So if you can imagine, anywhere from 75 to 100 meter long ship with about 40 sailors in it, heading out, maybe 2 or 3 of these ships go out. They link with NORAD, and they provide not only radar coverage off the coast to augment the improvements to the NORAD system, but they also provide the ability to engage threats, inbound ballistic missile threats, potentially hostile satellites, from Canadian assets off the coast of Canada to defend Canada. So that's the thought process and the idea that's been built by Commander Dean Lang is running lead on this as DNR 3, and Lieutenant Commander Stéphane Baudouin. So that team has come up with that. We're not sure what it's going to look like exactly. We don't know how many we're going to need. We're in the process of doing the studies that will help to inform what we ask government for. But in the broad strokes, that's what the Canadian multi-mission corvette looks like. Excuse me. It is a capable warship that bridges the gap between our constabulary Arctic offshore patrol ships and our high-end warfighter, either the Halifax class before she retires, and the River class destroyer. All right, next slide, please. The delivery of mid-2030s makes Commodore Armstrong, it puts a smile on his face that we're being that aggressive. But if you look at the current political situation in the world, geopolitical situation in the world, and you look at the fact that we will be losing platforms and sea days with the loss of the Kingston class, and you also look at the industrial expansion that we're seeing in the small to mid-sized shipyards, being aggressive, I think, is the only way that that us warfighters can signal to government that this is something we need now, and that we can't wait. We've waited too long already, and we're really playing catch up. So that's what we're hoping to achieve by the aggressive suggestion that by mid-2030s we could be getting corvettes. So here's just a little graphic that shows what we're looking at. It really is an evolution on the Kingston class. It'll be a fully capable warship, part of the order of battle, and very capable. Next slide, please. So just as I took the job of DNR, the Royal Canadian Navy Innovation Cell that had worked previously directly for the commander of the Navy was brought over, and we created the DNRX, which is our innovation section. The idea of that section is to engage in the innovation space of the ideas programs, science and technology fairs, tech companies, places that we don't normally engage with as military procurement specialists. They're looking at AI, they're looking at small companies. This is just a small sample of the innovation projects that we're doing. We're about to launch a contest that I guess I can go into a little bit. It's called Relvel Update. The Air Force successfully had introduced an innovation contest system as well, and I can't remember what it was called. But they have just, a master warrant officer designed a new flight clothing system, modular flight clothing system, sewed it up himself. Him and his wife sewed up these mock-up flight suits that were more comfortable and more ergonomically useful. And the commander of the Air Force selected that project and has put it into production. And those flight suits, that flight ensemble, will be issued in the very near future. So we thought, we're going to take that idea of a project that gets sent out to the rank and file, to the sailors, the officers, the civilian members of the defense team. I don't really care. They submit their ideas. We'll vet the ideas. They'll have a contest. We'll pick an idea per year that we will pursue, and the winner will receive some sort of a prize, like a trip with the DNR team to one of the major trade shows, like West or DSEI in London or something like that. We haven't settled on an exact prize, but something that ties in with the development of capability for the RCN. And we haven't limited it to just widgets and things. It's open to ideas and policy changes that could be done. It's opening us up a little bit to be like a suggestion box. And I don't know if any of you were serving when Admiral Topshee was CANCOM Fleet Pack, and he had his fleet commander's suggestion box. For every good suggestion, there were a fair number of unsolicited critiques. But if you don't ask, you don't hear the good ideas. And I've always been of the belief that everybody has a different way to attack a problem. Everybody has their own ideas, and I do not have a patent on good ideas. If you talk to my wife, she might suggest that I don't have very many good ideas at all. So that's where we're at with that. The RPAS target drone is really cool. It simulates a variety of inbound missiles. It's quite inexpensive, and it will potentially free up a lot of range money that we've been using on American ranges in order to test our fire control and engagement systems in the ships. AI collision avoidance is right now a decision-making tool for officers of the watch, but what we're using it for is to train AI to drive ships so that they don't hit each other. So eventually that AI-driven collision avoidance could be put into the operating system of an uncrewed surface ship to allow for it to go out and, ply the oceans without any people on board. Next slide, please. Victoria class modernization. I mentioned earlier that we're still putting improvements into the Victoria class. Unfortunately, due to the long work periods and our difficulty with maintaining those submarines and keeping them at sea, some of the projects that were envisioned for the Victoria class modernization have been canceled, just because the complexity of installation, the time required to install them, would not have given back very much actual return on investment. But there are a few things. We're doing some acoustic quieting. There's an air monitoring system that's going to go into the submarines, and the periscope replacement request for proposals is almost ready to be released. So that's some good news. And we've also there's a galley modernization project. I don't know when the last time was many of this group got in, or if you've ever seen the galley in a Victoria class submarine. The UK Royal Navy, I don't think, put a lot of weight on their culinary expertise, or perhaps the things that they put in them 30 years ago have just broken. But they've got convection microwave ovens held up with cargo straps, and we're gonna do better than that. The sailors, the submariners deserve better than that. So really cool contract signed with an indigenous fabrication company. They're building all the galleys for insertion into the Victoria class. So they're super excited about that. It's the first time that company has done a defense project. They do fabrication, and they've done similar things with commercial vessels, but not with a naval ship. So that's a good news story. And I think that's about all there is to it. The main thing here, Victoria class needs to last until the introduction of Canadian patrol submarines. If we stop making submariners, it's doubtful that we'll be able to make them when we get new submarines. We got to keep that expertise in the Navy, in our sailors, in our officers, so that when the new equipment is delivered, we already have the people the right crew to drive it. Next slide, please. Okay, there's some sexy pictures of missiles going whoosh and guns going bang. I hope that was informative. Like I said, I used the presentation that I used at similar to a presentation I use at trade shows, and I hope that I've been able to at least shed a little light on where our procurement head is at, where the team is focused, and what is coming down the pipe for your sailors and your officers. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, that was great, Drew. Really covered the waterfront, and I'm quite amazed by all of the interesting kit you guys are looking at these days, in particular the unmanned vehicles, the unmanned capabilities. As somebody who was involved back in the day in supporting the ships when they were operating Scan Eagle, I kind of got to know a little bit about that business, and so I don't follow it too closely anymore, but it was certainly, that was the genesis of it, and it seemed to take a while to get it up and running, but it's good to see that it's kind of making some progress now. A quick question from me would be, and you kind of touched on it, but I just want to totally confirm that the operators, we used to provide the operators, civilians who lived on board the ship and basically followed all the rules, etc. Most of them were ex-military people anyway. But I'm taking it now that the operators will be all military people then, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think eventually the evolution might require a UAV operator trade, or at least a specialty of some sort. But that we're in the process, and the we is the RCN we is in the process of looking at all of our trade structures, all the tasks that are going to be required of sailors and officers, and doing a refresh of all the trade specifications. So as we become more uncrewed system heavy, I wouldn't be surprised in the least to see an uncrewed system operator trade. The Americans have them. The British are just starting out. They're flying a rotary wing aircraft off their frigates right now, and the SAC is controlling it. So I don't know if that's the way we want to go. Perhaps if it's really easy, but I don't. I think we'll have to watch and shoot on that one. We'll have to see how the sailors start using this thing, these things, and develop the best way forward based upon experience.
Okay, yeah, understood. Okay, before we go any further, I'm going to turn off the recording, and then we'll carry on with some questions that are now starting to roll in.